President-elect Donald Trump has assembled his cabinet. Trump tapped billionaire Scott Bessent as Secretary of the Treasury. He also announced Oregon Congresswoman Lori Chavez DeRemer to lead the Department of Labor, Florida Representative Dave Weldon to be Director of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and Dr. Marty Makary to head the FDA. He also picked Dr. Jeanette Neshawite for Surgeon General. Those last two were people on Fox News frequently.
Perhaps one of the most newsworthy announcements was Trump naming Russell Vought, an architect of the controversial Project 2025, to lead the Office of Management and Budget. If confirmed, he'd be going back to his roots. He previously served in Trump's OMB during the president-elect's first term. Trump picked another ally, Brooke Rollins, for Secretary of Agriculture. Rollins is currently the CEO of the America First Policy Institute, a conservative pro-Trump think tank that has been a landing spot for other members of the previous Trump administration. Trump also chose his first black nominee, NFL veteran and conservative commentator Scott Turner, to spearhead HUD, the Department of Housing and Urban Development.
A slew of reactions have been pouring in. Former Rising co-host Batya Ungar-Sargon wrote on X, Trump's cabinet is one of the most progressive in decades. It's anti-war, pro-union, committed to tariffs, hawkish on immigration, signaling how seriously Trump is taking the task of elevating the working-class Americans who gave him victory. Days before Trump announced Turner, CNN pundit Makary jumped the gun, posting, quote, "Blacks for Trump, don't worry, we just want y'all to know you're not qualified," criticizing the lack of black nominees at that point. Conservative commentator and host on The Blaze, Jason Whitlock, however, wrote, quote, "There are some of us black folk that prioritize values over skin color, more concerned with policies than race. I don't care whether or not Trump named any black people to his cabinet. I care about whether the policies they enact make it easier for Christians and patriotic Americans to live in this country." Establishment critic Tara Bull reacted with this, "The left, Trump is a misogynist Trump. Cabinet picks." She posted a picture then of the women Trump selected to be in his administration so far, demonstrating that maybe Mark Cuban was wrong about Trump not wanting to surround himself with talented, smart women. Yeah. He's certainly picked a number of women, including his chief of staff, Susan Wiles, the education secretary, Tulsi Gabbard, and many, many, many others, the press secretary, and so on. There's a great number of women who have been, as if a full binder of them
full of women.
To borrow a Mitt Romney phrase that got him in trouble for no good reason whatsoever.
We are showing our age. I hope all our audience knows what we're referring to when Mitt Romney ran in 2012 against Barack Obama. He claimed to have binders full of women to choose from. I do think it's interesting, though, Robby, that in relation to the Trump picks, people are, understandably enough, from a Trump sympathetic position, noting the number of women that he has nominated to important positions, as you've just outlined, and then when it comes to the scarcity of black people who he has nominated, kind of saying, well, it doesn't really matter. Jason Whitlock was making that argument in the tweet we posted. I mean, diversity either matters or it doesn't. You can't just sort of say it's important because he does it this time, but it doesn't matter when he doesn't do it in that area.
I mean, that's fair. It should, I would say, just does, well, diversity should matter in terms of background and experience, and certainly your gender or your race informs how you were perceived all your life and impacts you, and so I wouldn't say it doesn't matter or something like that. Also overlaps with various economic realities and class-based realities, but most people would agree, including most women, most black people, most Asian people, most Jewish people, most every subcategory. We just want the most qualified people in the world to be staffing the administration. The only people who are like, no, it has to be a black woman or something, are the MSNBC commentators in the increasingly irrelevant MSNBC, soon to be bought, perhaps. Did you see this last week? Maybe you and Amber talked about it. I don't know.
No, I don't think we did.
Oh, Elon and Don Jr. have been talking about buying MSNBC.
Trolling, Robby.
Oh,
I don't know why that could happen.
My response to that is, who would we make fun of if we didn't have them to kick around anymore? I mean, I like the idea of Elon MSNBC.
I mean, you like it a lot more than I do. Yeah, I would be equally appalled by an Elon.
Oh, I'm eyeing the 9 p.m. hour on an Elon MSNBC.
I mean, I can't even begin to know where we go with that.
Anyway.
in relation to, I actually sort of segueing off the point you were making about, the most qualified person and all of that, rather than the choices that are either promoting diversity or can be seen more negatively. One of the most interesting things, I think, trying to be objective about Trump's picks, is the very different ideologies that are represented within those picks. So you have some really quite establishment people. Marco Rubio, for example, yeah, he has some, more interesting elements. But, you were mentioning in your radar this morning Tulsi Gabbard. There's not a lot of common ground in the worldviews of a Marco Rubio and a Tulsi Gabbard, for example. There's also the point that I think we alluded to in the introduction here, or someone mentioned it in one of the tweets, about the pro-union or pro-Labour kind of element in it. Laurie Chavez-Derrimer, the proposed Labour secretary, was one of only 3 Republicans in the House to vote for legislation that protects the right to organise and so forth. Now, whether that is Trump seeking to bolster working class support, which obviously he has made progress on in the past, maybe, but I mean, it's something that is unexpected, I would say, by mainstream or what used to be mainstream Republicans.
Ross Douthat at the New York Times wrote a really interesting column this weekend about 3 ways you can look at the picks and try to explain them. And the first way is, noting that these are people of diverse ideological backgrounds. So one way is that, yeah, it's assembling a kind of team of rivals based on and rewarding of specific interest groups who helped contribute to Trump's victory. RFK Jr. fell in line, brought in some of those people who echo his views on health-related matters. So he's rewarded, they're rewarded, they have a seat at the table. Same thing for the Tulsi Gabbard contingent of what was at some point a progressive left worldview, and if she's brought some people with her, so she gets that reward. He's giving something to establishment Republicans in the form of Marco Rubio, and so on and so forth. That's one way to look at it. Another way to look at it is he has picked people who are specifically combative with the agency or the department they've been selected to run. Maybe you can't quite make that case in the Rubio example, but in the others you really can. Tulsi Gabbard, leading critic of the intelligence community, she's picked to run it. RFK Jr., unrelentingly critical of health, science, food, drug regulators, picked to run that agency, and so on and down the line.
But to that point, I think that's valid enough to a degree. I think the concern I would have, and lots of people on the Liberal side would have, would be when that extends to the Department of Justice and Pam Bondi as the proposed Attorney General, because she is someone who, firstly, like way back in 2016, kind of led chants of lock her up aimed at Hillary Clinton, but more to the point was at least credulous about suggesting that the 2020 election was fraudulent in some way. And so having that person, I think, atop the Department of Justice is very concerning for a lot of people.
At the same time, she has, I think, reassured a lot of people because she's less of a, what's the right word to describe a colorful character compared to Matt Gaetz. I think even a lot of establishment Republicans who do not buy into the things said about the election in 2020 were very elated to have her picked for this spot. And then the third reason, just to go back to this, that Ross Douthat said these choices could have been made, and the one I actually agree with, and I alluded to at some other point in the show today, is Trump is primarily, we should never forget, Trump is first and foremost a media and entertainment figure who has tapped into something in the American psychology that he understands that traditional political figures and the parties and the ideologues have not understood. And he has picked people, I mean, so much of his cabinet is taken from Fox News. He has picked people who are very good in the areas of the media where he has also excelled, social media, television, to make the case to the American people that the Trump Republican agenda is working for them. He has picked people who are very good at that, at excelling as communicators. So I wonder if we're moving into a role where the job of the person leading the department is really to be that communicator. And then I'm sure even as provocative and heterodox a thinker or operator as Tulsi Gabbard, you're still going to have people behind them who are more traditional party operators or government operators, but the leader of the organization, the front man, the person you see, is someone whose skill set, whose biggest value add is selling the American people, or selling the people paying attention to social media and watching on TV, that this is the agenda that works for them.
And I actually agree with that, and I think it's something that Democrats need to learn from. And I was talking about this actually with someone else at the weekend. The Trump realizes, I think, that the old style of political communication, which is that you sit down on Meet the Press or 60 Minutes or whatever, and the person says, in 2003 you said this, and now you don't believe that. I'm not saying there's no place for that, but that is now an insufficient way by far to communicate with an American public that has become more accustomed to all kinds of social media, to podcasts, and to seeing a more authentic, unbuttoned version of political figures. And so I think Trump sees that. I don't really disparage people purely on the basis that they're TV commentators, obviously. I think that it's an
important skill set, damn it.
Important skill set.
We should be governed by TV commentators.
Should be better paid all around.
Yes.
But the point is, communication has changed radically, and I think Democrats have been left behind to some extent in that respect.
I agree. We've got a lot more to come today on Rising, including a great interview with our friend Michael Schellenberger and many other topics. We'll discuss more of the cabinet picks and some funny moments from Justin Trudeau, Brian Williams, Bill Maher, and others. Stay tuned.